y'all, Jamie Flares here. I'm coming today to talk about this idea of spiritual bypassing. Now, I don't have everything figured out or some solid thesis to offer you here, but I want to share some thoughts on this idea of spiritual bypassing and what I think how we might be dancing, how some of us might be dancing with this, or how we interface with this idea. So the idea of spiritual bypassing is this idea that we're using our spirituality to perhaps not look at the reality of what it's like to be a human on this planet. And there's a lot of pieces that I'm going to at least attempt to tease apart here and kind of look at with you today, if you're so inclined. So that word can be hurled around as a judgment, right? Like you're spiritually bypassing, or your way of being in the world right now doesn't meet up with my way of being in the world. There can be this sort of underlying pretense of, you have to care about this particular issue the way I do, or you have to feel a certain way about something the same way that I do, or you have to be in relationship or act as a result of this thing in the same way as I do, or in a particular way. And that to me is comes from this judging place of you're doing it right or not doing it right, or it needs to look like this or it doesn't need to look like this. So that's one kind of thought that's kind of swimming around here. There's sort of an inherent idea that something with bypassing or with not bypassing, something has to look a certain way in order to be done right? Spiritually, we can get into that trap in the spiritual world of you need to do X, Y, and Z in order to be spiritual, in order to be a good human, or in order to blah, 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 right? These conditions that we put on our experiences. And, if you're really spiritual, you're not afraid, or if you're really this, you're not that. And there's all these limits and conditions that are put on our human experience. So there's kind of this either or lie. You can care about the state of the world, or you can be spiritually free, or you can be emotional, or you can be free, or whatever. I don't know. There's lots of ideas about either or. And I think as we navigate this incredibly tumultuous time, especially those of us who are engaged in a spiritual path of some sort, whatever that might look like for us, those are all different. How do we be with the ache of the world and not collapse into it, or not feed into old systems, old energy patterns, old ways of being that we don't choose for ourselves anymore, right? These pieces of reality that are falling away that we no longer want to participate with. But how do we also have that discernment and choose what we relate to without bypassing? So what I consider as I work with maps of wholeness and models of wholeness is that bypassing is a way of going around the wholeness of our experience and the wholeness of all parts of ourselves. There are ways of also kind of cutting off and creating conditions inside of ourselves. That to me is spiritual bypassing. That can look a lot of different ways. It can be escapism. I'm checking out. I'm not willing to be here. I'm not willing to, it's like I'm going to leave the building. I'm not even going to be involved in this. I'm not going to look at it. There can be this not willing to acknowledge something or be with something. Nope, not for me. I will not meet that. Right. But if it's an experience that is in our field anyway, and we're saying no to it without some discernment, without some relationality with that thing, then we're missing. We might be missing the mark. We might be missing something. We might be cutting parts of ourselves off. Similarly, but kind of alternative, if we collapse into something, right? If we collapse into despair, if we collapse into hopelessness, if we collapse into fear, if we get stuck in an emotion that we're not able to move or open up and access other parts of our reality too, that can be a problem. If one part of ourselves is trying to dominate another part of ourselves, like if our thinking mind is trying to dominate our emotions, like you will not feel that. This is what I tell you, you know, if we're having this sort of like dominator complex that's happening inside of ourselves, that can also be another way of bypassing, and we can, you know, color that and dress that up in our spiritual finery, right? And similar to the collapse, you know, we can also fall into this victimhood identification. So there's also a lot of nuance in that too, because there's a difference between feeling the heartache of our planet, of our humanity, of the people in our lives that we love, of our own hurt parts. There's a difference between being with that, being willing to feel it, being willing to be in relationship with that, and identifying ourselves as a victim in that. So there's a lot of nuance. So when we throw out this word spiritual bypassing, or we pass judgment on others based on how they're choosing to interface with the world, it tends to lose a lot of nuance. It tends to lose a lot of the depth where things can be explored. So I'm not sure if I'm explaining what I want to explain here very well, or share what I want to share. But I think, so spiritual bypassing to me, it doesn't mean, like if I'm choosing to feed a set of beliefs inside of me, a way of looking at the world, a reality that I am co-creating with life through a path of discernment, you know, through a path of like, I look at all that is available, all the beliefs, all the different realities, all the things that could be true. And I come into the core of who I am, honoring my mind, honoring my heart, honoring my body, honoring my higher self, you know, these other aspects of me that have totally different perspectives. If I can come into the center of myself and honor all of that in the way that I walk through my life, not having to cut off any part of myself, while also retaining choice about what I feed, what I identify with, what I spend my time and attention and energy on, you know, how I differentiate between self and other, what is my choice in any given moment. That's to me that's where we want to go. That's where we want to be, is in that center of our own truth, recognizing that everybody has a different truth. There is no one way, and that there's usually a very complex set of forces that are acting upon any individual that shape how they're experiencing their life. But bypassing to me is feeling like we have to cut off parts of our reality. So, you know, spiritual bypassing, like some ways to know if you're spiritually bypassing, if you're like not allowing yourself to feel how you actually feel, not allowing yourself to look at what actually hurts, not allowing yourself to be in relationship with that which is in your experience, feeling like you have to other either people or systems or structures outside of you versus othering yourself. So those are some musings. Hopefully some of which made sense. Yeah, just thinking about this idea of bypassing. I think I've said it. So I'll let this be. As always, when I come to share things, I come with the spirit of wanting to be in conversation. So if something sparks in you, you know, I'm not coming sitting on like it might feel like that because I am talking to my own camera here without an audience, but this is relational. All the work and all the things that I share are meant to be relational. They're meant to be like, you know what that triggers in me, or you know what that makes me think of. That's the invitation here, is to share, like, what does this spark in you? What do you think about this term spiritual bypassing? What does it mean to you? What is your way of, what are your maps for navigating the world inside of you and the world outside of you in a way that feels like it honors the whole of you and the truth of your being? Okay, much love.